Hello and welcome to World News on TVP World. I'm Marie Cato. European Union Ministers of Defence are gathering in Warsaw for an informal summit. Rearmament of EU member states and boosting the European defence industry are some of the key topics on the agenda. The ministers gathering at the Warsaw Citadel are set to focus on future support for Kyiv and the EU's role in securing a lasting peace in Ukraine. The officials will also discuss an initiative by Kosiniak-Kamysz which is meant to strengthen the Ukrainian army. The proposal involves sending Kyiv 2 million rounds of large-caliber ammunition worth some €5 billion by the end of the year. Alongside EU defence ministers, Ukraine's defence chief Rustem Umerov and NATO Deputy Secretary General Radmila Siekierska are expected to attend. The meeting itself will be led by the EU High Representative for Foreign Affairs Kosiniak-Kamysz and Polish Minister of Defence Władysław Kosiniak-Kamysz. Poland might receive €20 billion to bolster up its defence industry as early as December 2025. Polish Defence Minister Władysław Kosiniak-Kamysz said during a press briefing on Wednesday. The funding will come from the Rearm Defence Fund introduced as a means to realise measures outlined in the European Defence Outlook, the European Commission's white paper on the bloc's security. In an exclusive interview for TVP World, Polish Defence Minister Władysław Kosiniak-Kamysz outlined plans and challenges regarding Poland's defence spending and manufacturing.
This year, we will allocate nearly 5% of the GDP to spending related to arms and armed forces upkeep. Most of these funds will go toward modernization efforts, which means new purchases. Here, we are counting heavily on funding from the European Union to help us. I can't say how many contracts will come to fruition, because we also need a strong defense industry that can manufacture arms and systems we require. And that is the biggest challenge today, both in Poland and in Europe, because we lack production capacity, particularly for ammunition, but also for other equipment. I want to see more production lines for the Piorun air defense system, better manufacturing capabilities for the Borsuk, the contract which has finally been signed. I hope that the Polish Navy in particular will be able to tap these European funds for a significant spending boost. We're talking about €20 billion that Poland could potentially receive. We have plenty to spend it on, as the armed forces needs are high.
The new action plan for a competitive and decarbonised steel and metals industry in Europe was the topic of today's debate in the European Parliament. Polish Minister for European Affairs Adam Szłapka took the floor, emphasising the need to boost EU's competitiveness.
Recognizing the sector's difficulties, our presidency is intensifying work towards a strong industrial policy that will strengthen the competitive position of European companies and ensure economic security. In particular, we will invite in May EU Ministers for Competitiveness to discuss measures to address the situation of energy-intensive industries, including the steel and metal industries. A key focus will be reducing high energy prices by cutting dependence on costly imported fossil fuels and accelerating electrification through renewable and low-carbon energy sources.
There is no mention of NATO in the mineral agreement with the United States, said Volodymyr Zelensky on Tuesday evening. During his brief statement, Zelensky added that a decision regarding the deal will be made in the coming days.
As for this agreement and NATO matters, NATO is not part of this agreement, nor has it ever been. Regarding EU matters and how we associate them with this agreement, it is clear that this agreement cannot contradict our efforts, aspirations, or firm intention for future membership in the European Union. Therefore, it is crucial that this agreement cannot be a separate document. Nothing should conflict with this. At this stage, I do not see any risks to discuss until the lawyers provide their resolution. This is the current format and stage of this document.
According to anonymous sources, a key Kremlin negotiator is expected to travel to the United States this week for talks with U.S. President Donald Trump's administration. Relations between the two countries are on the agenda. Kirill Dmitriev, the chief of Russia's sovereign wealth fund, who was appointed special investment and international economic envoy by Vladimir Putin, will meet with U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff in Washington. The talks between the two officials will focus on strengthening relations between the two countries as they seek to end the war in Ukraine. Both the White House and the Russian embassy in Washington did not immediately respond to a request for comment. The EU has announced it is launching the Ukraine to EU program worth 16.7 million euros. The flagship initiative aims to support Kyiv in its EU membership bid.
The announcement of the project was made at the conference called Ukraine's EU membership, not if, but when, which took place on Tuesday. The three-year program will provide strategic support to Ukrainian institutions and civil society involved in European integration efforts. Ukrainian Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal welcomed the launch of the initiative, saying that it demonstrates that the European Union is always by Ukraine's side on its path towards the common future.
Russia launched yet another drone attack on Ukraine overnight, targeting multiple regions of the country. One person was killed and dozens wounded.
In Kharkiv, the Russian strike caused fires that engulfed around 2,000 square meters of warehouse premises and production facilities. In addition, about 20 houses were damaged. 8 people sustained injuries. Zaporizhia was also the target of the overnight attack. 1 person was killed and 2 others wounded after a Russian drone hit cars in the region.
During an interview with Polish radio station RMF-FM, Polish Minister of Foreign Affairs Radosław Sikorski said Poland will be the largest beneficiary of Ukraine's post-war reconstruction. Sikorski also spoke about the viability of NATO's Article 5 and the war in Ukraine.
Sikorski went on to say that due to its proximity to Ukraine, Poland will become the logistics hub of the reconstruction. When asked about the timeline, he said he believes it only depends on Vladimir Putin. Sikorski added that Putin can end the war in 5 minutes by simply calling his chief of staff and sending relevant orders. The Polish foreign minister also noted that the conflict didn't start because of NATO's enlargement, but because of Russia's imperialistic ambitions. During the interview, Sikorski also expressed his belief that Article 5 of the alliance is still in force and allies will protect each other in case of any attacks.
The body of the 4th American soldier who went missing during military exercises in Lithuania has been found close to the border with Belarus. He and the 3 other victims died in a training accident when their vehicle sank in a swamp. The 4 soldiers went missing during an exercise and couldn't be located for days due to difficult terrain and weather. The armored carrier was eventually found in a bog, but conditions made rescue operations challenging. Soldiers and rescue workers had to cut a path through the wetlands and reinforce the reservoir banks in order to get the necessary heavy equipment on site. Only on Monday were 3 of the 4 crew found. The 4th body was discovered on Tuesday evening. American, Lithuanian and Polish soldiers took part in the recovery efforts. Moving on to France, emotions ran high in the French parliament during the debate about Marine Le Pen's conviction, the leader of the far-right National Rally. The hopeful for the 2027 presidential elections has been barred from holding public office for 5 years after a court found her guilty of embezzlement of European funds.
Aiming to be above the law in order to exercise the establishment's vendetta against its only opponent, the National Rally, and against its main figurehead, Marine Le Pen. Tyrannies lock up their opponents, and now tyrant judges are killing the rule of law in public. It is beyond dispute, and it should not be disputed in these chambers, that judicial decisions should be supported and that judges should be protected when exercising their duties. And I affirm, on behalf of the government, that this is the case. You've said it, there is no free pass whatsoever in any law, and the judges are exercising their duties when they issue verdicts.
Marine Le Pen has appealed the decision. It is unclear whether the appeal will be processed in time for the presidential campaign. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will travel to Hungary on Wednesday, defying an International Criminal Court arrest warrant issued for him over alleged war crimes in Gaza.
Netanyahu will visit Budapest at the invitation of Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán. According to media reports, the aim of the visit is for the Israeli Prime Minister to push for Hungarian support for U.S. President Donald Trump's plan to ethnically cleanse Gaza. As one of the 125 member states of the ICC, Hungary is legally obliged to arrest Netanyahu upon his arrival in Budapest and transfer him directly to The Hague to face charges of war crimes and crimes against humanity the ICC says he committed during the war in Gaza. Orbán, however, has made clear that Hungary will not enforce the ICC's decision.
The Georgian parliament has passed the final reading of a new foreign agents law which expands the definition of foreign agents to include individuals.
Approved by 86 MPs, the Georgian law now targets both organizations and individuals who receive foreign funding and fail to register with the Ministry of Justice. Non-compliance is punishable by up to 5 years in prison or a $10,000 fine. The updated version of the law adopted in May last year also includes a set of restrictive changes to the country's broadcasting law. Broadcasters are now banned from receiving direct or indirect funding from a foreign source. The Foreign Agents Law has drawn sharp criticism from both Georgian opposition parties as well as U.S. and EU officials who believe it will be used as a tool to further suppress civil society and independent media.
Liberation Day for America. U.S. President Donald Trump is expected to unveil a new set of reciprocal tariffs. The official announcement will come on Wednesday. It is unclear which countries the tariffs will be levied against, but Canada may be one of them.
My understanding is that the tariff announcement will come tomorrow. They will be effective immediately. And the president has been teasing this for quite some time, as you know. He's talked a lot about April 2nd as Liberation Day in America. It would be taking place today if not for April Fool's Day.
Although representatives of Trump's administration seemed in high spirits, the sentiment was not shared by Democratic senators who criticized Donald Trump's attack on U.S. closest trading partner and neighbor, Canada.
Canada is a friend, not an adversary. Canada is a sovereign nation, not a 51st state. And while we always have challenges with friends, we have a mechanism that Donald Trump negotiated, the USMCA, that enables us to work through trade deals, and we don't need tariffs at all. The president has justified the imposition of these tariffs on, in my view, a made-up emergency.
Policymakers also highlighted that the group most affected by Trump's trade war will be domestic consumers.
Don't take my words about how much these tariffs are going to cost. Take the ever colorful Peter Navarro, who Trump's one of his trade people, says it will raise $100 billion off the car tariffs this year, $600 billion off the reciprocal tariffs, $700 billion tariff fees. Who's going to pay those? American consumers. This will be the largest tax increase on American consumers in modern times.
It is not yet known what the scope of Trump's tariffs will be. However, he has previously suggested that they could be applied to all countries that have trade relations with the U.S.
Large-scale Chinese military drills around Taiwan continue. Beijing has confirmed that its aircraft carrier, the Shandong, is involved in live exercises in the Taiwan Strait. Officials say the drills are designed to access the Chinese Army's ability to implement a blockade of the self-governing island.
Taipei's Ministry of Defense reported on Tuesday, the first day of the drills, that the Shandong participated in operations about 220 nautical miles southeast of Taiwan. China released a statement detailing that the exercises involve coordination between ships and aircraft, airspace control and attacks on both land and sea targets located to the east of Taiwan. Beijing framed these exercises as a direct warning to Taiwanese quote-unquote separatists, reinforcing its stance against Taiwan's independence movement.
Today marks the 20th anniversary of the death of Pope John Paul II, a figure whose legacy continues to resonate around the world. Widely remembered for his pivotal role in the fall of communism in Eastern Europe, particularly in his native Poland, John Paul II's influence extends far beyond the Vatican.
As the first non-Italian pope for over 400 years, his visits to his homeland were a source of immense inspiration to millions. His strong moral leadership, particularly his steadfast support for the solidarity movement in Poland, helped fuel the struggle for freedom and democracy behind the Iron Curtain. John Paul II is also remembered for his efforts to promote peace, interfaith dialogue and human rights. His unwavering commitment to justice and his deep spiritual leadership have left the mark on the Catholic Church.
And that concludes World News at 2 p.m. Thank you for joining us and stay tuned for more on TVP World. Goodbye.